with that, let's go on. Kenny.
Okay, good to go. So today, I'm Kenny Young, first of all, and this is some work I've been doing with Joe Yang, and our supervisor is Rich Sutton. So I'm going to be talking about basically an algorithm for integrating episodic memory into reinforcement learning. So in this case, by episodic memory, I mean essentially remembering past states in order to later on use that past information to make correct decisions in, I should say, partially observable environments. Okay, so first of all, just what is partial observability? So ordinarily with an RL algorithm, we generally make the assumption that our current state, or some kind of current state we just have inherent access to somehow, is sufficient to select the correct action. And that's essentially what's meant by the Markov property. Actually, Markov property is a little stronger than that, but this is basically the part that matters to us. So in the real world, it's actually usually the case that the optimal action is highly dependent on your history of observations and not just on, say, one single observation or one single state you have access to at a given time. So just to give a quick example of that, maybe you're playing a sport like soccer, and even though you can only look in one direction, you want to have some kind of sense of what's going on. So you want to know where your teammates are and where the ball is, so you can know where you can pass to or where you can expect the pass to come from. So that would be a partially observable environment already, and most real-world tasks are. So to deal with this, there's various methods of what is called state construction. So even though we aren't given access to a state that's sufficient to select the correct action, maybe we can build one up over time. So what we want to do is go from all these long history of observations to a single state that is actually sufficient to select the correct action. And moreover, we probably want that to be constructible in a recurrent manner, which means we can go from our last state plus our current observation to a new state, and that new state will be essentially sufficient to select good actions. The reason we want it to be recurrent is just otherwise we'd have to essentially save the full history of observations anyway in order to construct our new state, so we want to avoid that. So there's many possible methods of this, to do this, that have been looked at. So I won't get into details of what any of these methods are, but you've probably heard of a lot of them. So you use temporal difference networks, recurrent neural networks, predictive state representation, or just simply maintain either the full history or a certain part of the history. So what I'm going to talk about today isn't actually state construction, but something you could put on top of state construction, I think, to maybe make sort of certain environments easier to deal with where you have really long-term dependencies. So that is like, you still want to construct a state that's useful to you in the short term, but for longer-term things, maybe you want to actually be able to store past states and then later on recall them so you can keep that information around for a much longer time rather than just that sort of one-step recurrent update process. So why would you want to do this? There's a few things I thought, and maybe there's other reasons, but one is exploiting hierarchical structure of real-world tasks. So what I mean by that, for example, is if you're doing something like building a house, and say you're working on part of the frame, you maybe pick up a board, go hammer in a couple nails, but then when you step back, you want to remember, okay, why was I doing this, and what's my next step? So when you're just working on that one piece of the frame, maybe you want to have some kind of state that allows you to do that really well, but you don't need the whole picture in mind. But when you step back, you want to be able to recover that whole picture. So I think this is sort of aimed at that kind of task, and I think a lot of real-world tasks do have that structure. So another sort of related reason is you want to avoid cluttering your short-term memory with long-range dependencies. So while you're focused on a sort of lower-level subtask, you want to really be able to focus all your state space or all your computational energy on that task, and you don't want to have all these like things you have to remember later, like bumping around in your state space or your brain or whatever, that might make that immediate task harder to achieve. And then the last reason that I have here is basically more efficient propagation of information in both forward and backward directions. So for backward directions, I essentially mean the learning signal. So if you have to propagate that learning signal one step at a time, all the way through your entire history, that's going to be a very inefficient process. But if maybe you can just save a past state and then look at it later, and now you can jump that learning signal sort of over the whole time between those 2 points. So that could be much more efficient. And by forward in time, I mean you can just sort of dump something that you know is going to be useful later, but might not be useful in the short term, and then later on you can recover that. And that'll be a much more efficient way to propagate that information forward than making one-step recurrent updates all the time and being careful to maintain that information you care about. So to give a motivating human example, another motivating human example, I should say. So you just got off work and you want to perform a sequence of tasks. First you want to drive to a tennis court. You're going to park near the tennis court in a large parkade. You want to go actually play tennis, and then afterwards you want to be able to find your car and finally drive to the store, pick up milk, and then eventually drive home. So I just got two different agents in the actual tennis playing part of this task. So the first one has a memory, and the second one doesn't. And as you can see, basically the one that does not have a memory has to use its state space to remember that it has to pick up milk later and to remember the location of its car. So the idea is that it's going to play a worse game of tennis, while the one with the memory can just say, focus all its energy on playing tennis while it's playing tennis, and then afterwards it can think, okay, my car, where is it? And its memory will return to it something that allows it to recover the location of its car. And then it can think, okay, I'm going home. Do I know anything about that? Okay, I remember an empty fridge. Maybe I need to go buy milk. That's kind of the idea there. So real-world tasks are hard. So here's a simple task that I'm looking at just to explore this episodic memory idea. So the idea here is that you have a sequence of states your agent goes through, and then at the very end you have a sequence of decisions you have to make. And there's only one possible path to that sequence of decisions that will lead to reward, and all the others lead to no reward. And the only way to know which decision you have to make is to look at these two states that are highlighted in yellow. And what distinguishes those from the blue states is just a set of 2 bits. So if one bit is 1 and the other is 0, that means it's actually going to tell you something about a particular decision. And otherwise it's just going to be random, useless information. So you actually have to learn that bit, or those 2 bits, is what tells you that you have to pay attention to these states. And then there's going to be information contained in those that tells you which decision it's pertaining to and what the right decision to make at that point is. So you can see, if you only kept around your present state here, you obviously couldn't succeed. So you have to either do some kind of recurrent update, or you have the episodic memory I'm talking about here. That'll actually be a very efficient way to deal with this task. So yes, it's highly tailored to the task we're looking at, but it's just a proof of concept.
Could you do that one more time?
The whole thing?
I think this is where I get lost.
Okay. Sure, I can try. So basically, you have 2 states that are giving you information about what the right sequence is to pick at the end.
2 states.
Yeah, somewhere in this. So you're going through a whole chain of states, right?
Is it episodic task?
Yes, it's episodic.
So you start some.
Yeah. So the start state is the orange state, and then you're just going to go through it in a chain. And then at the very end, there's going to be some special states where you have to make decisions, a sequence of decisions, I should say. And if you get that sequence right,
you don't
get a
really mean
reward.
there's a special state. You mean a
Special
time step.
Yeah, I guess so.
So there's a.
You could, in this case, the same agent could work if you varied the environment length, so it wouldn't be good enough to just look at a specific time step, but you could vary the length and still.
Let's don't worry about the generality, just the concrete
Okay.
here. There's the 7th time step where you're going to have to make a decision.
Sure, yeah. And then in there somewhere are going to be states that tell you what the correct decision is.
So this is the part that I'm confused about, because you say the 7th state, you mean the state you'll be at the 7th time step, because it's different states, because depending on the past, you have to, the different actions we correct. So it really is a different state.
Yeah.
You can be in different states at the 7th time step.
Mm-hmm.
The world, like your dynamics, your future will be different if you're in different things that happened previously. So it's actually different states.
You mean, sorry, is this the 7th time step or is this actually?
Actually, I'm confused. Are we going around like this?
Sorry, no, it's not a circle, it's a chain, but the bend is just to make it fit on the page.
Yeah, we do go, we start at the yellow orange,
Yeah.
we go around, we end with black.
Yes, exactly. And the black is the only place where your decision, or what action you take, actually matters. And in that case, it's just you have to get the sequence right, and you'll arrive at a reward. And if you get that sequence wrong, so sequence of actions, you will get no reward.
And even from the black, you have to make a sequence.
Yeah. Sorry, well, okay, each one of these is a separate state. So it's a sequence of black states you pass through, and if you get the sequence right, you arrive at a reward. Does that make more sense? And then these, I should say, don't have to be in the locations they're at. They'll be scattered at each episode. So. And the information contained there will be different, and the correct answer will be different. So this is just a particular instance of a more general environment.
Question. So the black square is indicating a special event?
Well, it's indicating a state at which you have to make a decision, but the agent doesn't know that a priori. All it knows is I passed through some states, and at the end I get a reward. And it has to learn.
Does it receive a special signal when it arrives in the black state?
Yes, it does. It receives a signal that says, okay, I have to make a certain decision here. So that's what this decision index is.
But it doesn't tell it that it has to make a decision. It might be informed. It might learn that.
Yeah, it doesn't know that a priori, no.
It just receives a special signal at the decision.
It does receive a special signal, yes.
And then it doesn't receive a special signal at the yellow places?
Yeah, so that's what I was meant by that set of 2 bits. There's 2 bits, and
2 bits.
one of them is 1 and one of them is 0. And
There are how many? Is this representation?
Yeah, that's the representation.
There are 9 bits.
Yep.
And one of them is on only when you reach that first black state.
Yes.
And there's another one that's on when you reach the second black
Actually, that's
state.
not strictly true. So it's the same one indicating that this pertains to that decision as indicates that that's the decision you have to make. But what distinguishes the decision points themselves is just that everything else is 0. So that's the only difference there. But anyway, the concrete task isn't that important, so maybe I should move on and just come back to this at the end. Okay. So here's some things we want from a memory like this, or at least that I think we want from a memory like this. So we want to be able to store a fixed number of past states. We want to be able to query those states by content, by which I mean you don't have a special key or something associated with each value. You're just going to query based on the content of the memory itself. So you would say query based on my car, and it would return to you the location of your car or some image of your car you've seen before. Yeah, we want to be able to learn to query useful states using decision steps. So going into this task knowing nothing about what a useful state looks like, we want to be able to learn, okay, what do I have to query in this particular state to get back useful information out of my memory? And we want to be able to learn to write useful states to memory and ignore unimportant ones. So that's sort of the harder part in a sense. We want to be able to visit this sequence of states, and so we have only 3 memory slots available. We want to be able to learn what we actually have to store in there over time to get the best outcome at the end. So, yeah. And lastly, we want it to be trainable online. So by that I just mean order n, where n is the number of, say, parameters we're trying to train in each time step with no dependence on t. So it doesn't get harder to remember things as you pass through more time steps. So here's the proposed architecture, or a proposed architecture for tackling this. So the top part there is just advantage actor critic, if you're familiar with that. So it has a value function and policy. The value function is going to learn the value of the states independent of the memory. And the policy in this case is going to be conditioned on not just the state, but also what you remember. So your policy can be conditioned on your current state, but it can also be conditioned on some past information that we're recalling using this memory module. I should say each of these gray circles is actually some kind of neural network or function approximator anyway. And the last 2 here are the queries, so that's just going to produce a vector of the same size as your states. And we're going to do a comparison for some kind of distance measure with those states. In this case, we're seeking dot product and a softmax, and then we're going to probabilistically select one memory from that memory buffer that's similar to the query we made. And then the last part here is the red model. So that's actually going to attach a weight to each state indicating how important it is to keep it around, or possibly how unimportant, depending on the semantics. But yeah, what matters is there's essentially going to be a competition between everything in the memory and the state you're currently visiting to see who gets dropped from that memory in favor of the other. So if everything you have in there is really important according to your write weights, and the current state isn't, then you're just going to not write the current state. But if something in your memory isn't very important according to what you've learned, then you might replace it with the current state. And then I just have a question mark here because this is maybe one method you could use for deciding on whether to drop a memory, but maybe it's not the best one. I'm still looking at that. So there we would just say, okay, the probability of dropping memory I from that buffer is just the weight associated with it over the sum of all of the weights. So yeah. Just really generic probability. So yeah, then I'll just briefly talk about how we actually want to train this, or some ideas I have anyway. So the idea is to consider each memory query at a time step, so including the whole read-write process to be an action. So that is every memory, every state you've experienced from time 0 to the present time, you're going to call an action. And then we're just going to do basically a policy over memories to select one of those states that we want to actually look at the current time to condition our policy. So essentially memory store and recall is roughly equivalent to action selection in this. So the issues with that are action space grows over time, because at every time step we're just going to gain a new state, which is going to mean a new action, and yeah, it gets that much harder. And the second issue is that once we drop a state from the finite memory, it's no longer possible to query it at later time steps, so that's very different from action selection, because normally with actions we want to be able to make a separate selection at each time step, but here it's as soon as we lose that memory from the memory buffer, we can't query it ever again. So to keep things simple, let's talk a bit about the case where we only have one memory we're interested in, or we can only have the capacity to store one memory at least, and we just have to make a decision each time step, do I replace this with my current state, or do I keep it around? So the many memory case here is work in progress. And in this case, it's special because we don't actually need a query mechanism, it's just whatever memory you have in your buffer at a specific time, that's what your policy is going to get. So now assume that we just use this probability distribution rather than what I said before. So this is just, we associate a weight with each available state and then divide by the sum over all time of all the other weights of states. So that's essentially just a generic probability over every single memory we've experienced, not just one in the memory buffer. So we can't actually construct this distribution independently at each time step, because that would mean we have to save all the past states in order to draw from it. But what we can do is construct a distribution that looks like this, sort of a priori from time zero, but that has a high degree of correlation between each times in a particular episode. So the correlation is just because once we drop something, we can never get it back again. So we can't quite get the same distribution, we can get something similar. And is that correlation a problem? I'm not exactly sure, but I think it also comes out of the wash if you train over enough episodes. So given that, now what I'm thinking of doing is using a variant of advantage after critic to basically guess the gradient of expected return with respect to each of those weights we have. And since each of those weights is generated by some kind of model, we can then get a gradient with respect to the model parameters of each of those weights, and then just use the chain rule to compute an estimated gradient with respect to the network parameters. And finally, we can just ascend along that to improve the memory weights with respect to expected return. And then to clarify that, although probably not immediately, here's some math. The important thing here is that, and I don't know if this is actually novel, but I've never seen exactly this before, so if anyone can give me a citation, that would be awesome. So the thing is, we have the gradient with respect to a particular weight I here of the expected return at time t, and the interesting thing is it's just equal to that expression, and then we can use some kind of estimate. So this is just basically an advantage of choosing that memory, that particular memory at that time over our policy. So this expectation here is just implicitly over whatever policy we're currently following. And then the thing you can get out of this is that you can make an estimator where you only have to estimate the gradient with respect to the particular memory you selected. And that will give you something that in expectation still equals the actual gradient of the expected return. So yeah, without getting into too much detail on that, this means you don't actually have to remember all these past states in order to get correct gradients. You can just look at the one you actually query and then use that. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to extend to the many memory case, and that's a work in progress. So the last thing, I just have a few results and a quick disclaimer that these results are for a different algorithm than the one I was just highlighting. So this is sort of an ad hoc way of, if you remember back to that diagram, it's the drop probabilities I was indicating there that we're using. And we just have an ad hoc way of estimating gradients. So that's what we're trying to make more concrete now. But just to show that at least something like this can work, here's an example of that algorithm. So the environment here is a secret informant problem, which is just the problem I showed before, and I painted that, of length 15, so 15 points that are either just uses information or actually telling you what decision to make. And at the end you have two decisions to make between three actions, and the memory size here is fixed to 3, so that's, you need to store two of those two memories for the whole duration of the episode in order to make the correct decision at the end, and then you have one extra that you can afford to store something useless in. So here's some results. The first one is just, in red we have our learner, and in blue we have a baseline recurrent learner, not necessarily well-tuned, but to give an idea that this does work. And the baseline recurrent learner in this case actually learns nothing, and don't read too much into that because again, not very well-tuned, but and you can see that ours actually just succeeded this task, and then she gets up to roughly return 1 barring these little blips, which interestingly are associated with these blips in the rights, which I'll get into now. So this is showing here all good rights and bad rights. That's basically the right weights we're attaching to the actual useful information states versus the completely useless information states. So remember, this is essentially proportional to the probability of dropping them. So we actually want the good rights to have a very low drop probability and the bad rights to have a very high drop probability. And you can see that is what's happening overall. But whenever we have one of these little blips, it has a huge effect just because, basically because our environment is like 15. So if you have even a small chance of dropping something useful at each time step, you're probably going to drop it before the end and your return is going to suffer. So you can see that reflected in these two graphs. And the last thing I have is just to show that our query mechanism is working. So there you have the query that the query network is making at the first decision point, which should be correspond to that bit of the first decision point, and that is in fact happening. You can see the first decision point query there is getting close to 1, while the second decision point query is getting highly suppressed, and vice versa on the second graph. So that's all that's showing. And the very last thing I have here is just a simpler environment to show that the recurrent model, even though it's not working on that problem, it's not completely broken. So we reduce the environment length to 5 and just have 1 decision instead of 2. Then the recurrent network, the strictly recurrent model, does actually succeed at this task, but it's still a little slower than ours in this case. So yeah, that's all I have. Any questions?
What's the expected return for random agent?
Oh, yeah, I should have mentioned that. So it would be exactly where the recurrent, so it's, I guess, 1/9, because it has 2 opportunities. It has to make a decision, which would be correct with 1/3 probably. So, yeah, 1/9 would be random, which is exactly where that line is.
And then in the simpler environment, what's the expected?
You mean for random agent?
Yeah, for
It would
random.
be 1/3, so that's basically where they both start out.
Okay.
Because there's only one decision. Yes?
If you go to the previous page, the second graph, even though the first decision query is learned, you said it's learned correctly, as you can see, it goes to 1 and 0. But in the second one, it doesn't quite reach 1 and 0, even though your first decision is learned correctly.
Yeah.
So do you know why?
I don't. Joe, you have any comment on that?
Well, I would say that under this setting, the agent can already query the correct information out of the memory module. So he doesn't get a very strong motivation to finally push the query bit to 1 or -1. But at that time, you can just make the perfect decision at the end. So it's it doesn't hurt the performance.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if it's strictly 1 or -1. That's just sort of an upper limit on what it can be. But if it's significantly different, then it'll, with very high probability, only query the right things. Yes.
I don't think I get full details, so I should ask you about this particularly episodic memory later. I just want to mention I have an earlier paper at UAI that is for partially observable NDP.
Okay.
They use policy gradient method to train a agent that has internal memories. So, but the memory is not that you remember some past. You can define any way how the agent will define its own memory, like an internal memory. That's people call it internal history. I forgot how. Like Baxter was a word for that. So then you can. Then I did just calculate. Estimated gradients with respect to both the action parameters, probability parameters, and you can parameterize how you are going to evolve your internal states. Yeah, those are called internal states.
Right.
So you can then estimate the gradients with respect to those parameters also. So maybe not a. So it's very closely related.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Is that more like the recurrent stuff I was talking about then? Because you're doing the one-step updates and tuning parameters?
Considering that paper is for average cost, average reward. So, yeah, it's the recurrent case. I think I didn't fully get how is the episodic memory comes in your experiment. I can maybe ask you later, which is the episodic memory.
Okay, awesome. That's good. Yeah, I'll have to look at that paper because that does sound perfect.
A long time ago, in the last round or two of neural networks, there was a lot of work on content adjustable memories where you would write a whole vector memory so you could get back a piece of it, which is the basic functionality that you're looking for in memory. But they were totally different, and because they did not store particular vectors, they would like write them into the vector and write them into the memory, and they all would get all jumbled together.
Oh, I see.
And you would still, so like you wrote the same thing that's already there. Anyway, there was a huge literature on content adjustable memories based on neural networks, which is different than what you're doing. And I think what you're doing is what many people are doing nowadays. When you say
Yeah.
So, but do you have any sense of why they're doing something different from what's been done before, or has anyone compared them, or is it
Well,
just
yeah.
proceeding independently? Or?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm obviously not as up to date on the older literature as I probably should be, but
'Cause maybe that's like a big contribution to bring in the advantages of what's already worked out
yeah,
for,
that's true.
for those memories. It just seems funny to do something different
Yeah.
because it's exactly the same.
So the difference was basically that they're writing everything all at once rather than discretely writing different slots, because I know there's modern work that does that too, essentially like soft writes, so you're only updating memory location partially. I just never did an update, but I don't know if that's exactly the distinction.
Well, they write it in an error correction way, so like if you query and it already returns the exact same thing, maybe they would write it.
Right. I think I remember a work that does something similar to that recently too.
So you probably all heard about Hopfield networks and things of that
Okay.
era.
Yeah.
Hopfield was already a Johnny come lately to that era of content addressable memories. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to see how those compare.
Yeah, for sure.
They're different.
I think there's a lot of literature review I have to do because I've done basically none, so probably know this exact thing's already done, but hopefully not.
You have a question? Anybody else have a question? Excellent.